We're breaking down a devotion centered around Psalm 103. And right off the bat, this devotion hits on a totally universal human experience. It talks about those moments when our hearts get incredibly weary. And the crazy thing is, half the time we don't even realize it's happening. Think about the constant demands on our minds and the daily pressures we all face. The source points out how these things can slowly, silently rob people of their joy, leaving that inner spark feeling completely dimmed.
So why exactly does that happen? Well, the author points to a really common human tendency: spiritual forgetfulness. It sneaks up on us through the disappointments we just quietly carry around. The devotion notes that people have a habit of remembering their failures way faster than they acknowledge grace. We hold on to our burdens super tightly. We fixate on prayers that feel unanswered, and in the whole process, we just completely overlook the quiet mercies that the text says actually surround us every single day.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how David handles this exact struggle in the text. He isn't giving a speech to a massive crowd, and he's not shouting at his enemies. Nope, he's actually commanding his own weary soul. The text shows us he literally had to tell his own heart to wake up and remember God's faithfulness. He understood that before he could lead anyone else to worship, he first had to drag his own focus back to a God the text describes as endlessly faithful.
Moving on to our first major theme, Section 1, Forgetting Not His Benefits, Focusing on a Gracious and Loving God.
Here, the explainer digs into David's command to his soul to forget not all his benefits. And the source makes a super important distinction. We're not just looking at some grocery list of perks. It's a reminder that a loving God stands right behind every single blessing. David systematically stacks these up. You see this clear progression in the text: forgiving iniquities, healing diseases, redeeming life from destruction, and capping it all off by crowning with loving kindness. The devotion emphasizes that this final point is all about unearned mercy. It's described as a crown woven by patience and covenant love, which is a massive contrast to the judgment the text says humanity actually deserves. Let's zoom in on that very first benefit because it acts as the foundation for everything else: who forgives all your iniquities. The devotion puts a huge emphasis on the word all. It reminds readers that within this theology, even when it's so easy to be weighed down by past baggage, the cross is this eternal declaration that divine mercy is just way bigger than human guilt. When forgiveness happens in this framework, the text tells us it flows directly and willingly from God's own heart.
That brings us perfectly into Section 2, a Father's deep compassion, where we look at mercy that flows straight from His character. Building on that character, the text gives us one of the absolute most comforting visual metaphors you could imagine: as far as the east is from the west. Just think about that for a second. The heavens stretch way beyond what we can even see, and east and west literally never meet. By using this idea of infinite distance, the author is illustrating total, absolute forgiveness. The devotion explains that from this theological viewpoint, those forgiven sins are completely gone. They aren't continually held over anyone's head. The source then shifts to paint a really tender picture of how this incredible mercy actually applies personally. It portrays God as a deeply compassionate father. The explainer uses this beautiful image of a loving parent patiently lifting up a toddler who's just learning to walk, right? Brushing them off when they take a tumble. That is exactly how the devotional describes God dealing gently with humanity when they humbly approach Him.
And the text gives us a very specific reason for this immense patience. He remembers that humanity is just dust. Looking at it from this viewpoint, the Creator knows the human frame perfectly. He completely understands our innate weaknesses and limitations. And the explainer makes such a great point here. This doesn't excuse our shortcomings, not at all, but it beautifully explains the boundless compassion we see in the text. There's literally no surprise at human struggle.
Let's jump to Section 3, where we see a stark contrast from dust to everlasting love, exploring the unchanging covenant.
So having established that human frailty, the text now pans all the way out. On one side, it highlights human weakness, comparing our lives to grass that just passes so quickly. It's pointing out how our earthly achievements and our strength fade and are pretty soon forgotten. But on the flip side, it presents a divine nature, with mercy that stretches from everlasting to everlasting. The devotion emphasizes that while literally everything in the earthly realm changes, this unending covenant love remains totally and completely constant.
Now, this verse is designed to bring some serious peace to a troubled reader's heart. It affirms that way above all the chaos of our world sits a sovereign ruler. While our earthly circumstances change from minute to minute, the text affirms that the exact same God whose heart is full of gentle, fatherly mercy is also the absolute authority of the universe. In this framework, his deep compassion and his ultimate sovereignty are never, ever separated.
Which leads us to our fourth and final section, seeking the blesser himself, focusing on the ultimate revelation.
This brings us to a core lesson that honestly gets overlooked a lot in the text. The greatest blessing has actually always been God himself. The author suggests that we shouldn't just be rejoicing over the gifts, like the forgiveness, the healing, the redemption. Instead, the devotion points out that every single gift is meant to reveal the beautiful heart of the giver. And from a Christian theological lens, the source notes that all of this finds its absolute fullest expression in Jesus Christ.
So the devotion leaves readers with a really provocative challenge about our core motivations. It asks, are you merely seeking gifts, or are you actually seeking the giver? It points out how incredibly easy it is to get caught up in rejoicing over what can be done for us. But the ancient text actually urges its readers to take delight in the very nature of the Creator himself.
If this breakdown of Psalm 103 resonated with you today, I want to warmly invite you to follow the channel for daily explainers just like this one. And hey, consider sharing this analysis with friends or family who might really need this perspective on mercy and human frailty today. It truly is a fascinating look into a widely read piece of historical and spiritual literature. Ultimately, this devotional challenges us to look way beyond our immediate circumstances and really examine the nature of grace, frailty, and enduring compassion as it's presented in this ancient text. And it leaves us with a timeless question about human nature that I want to leave you with right now. Why is it so much easier for us to dwell on our burdens than it is to count our blessings? And what do you actually think about David's method of actively commanding his own soul to remember the good? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.